Welcome back to A Shark's Perspective. So as I mentioned on parts 1 through 5, I had the pleasure of speaking twice at LeadsCon's Connect to Convert conference, and they also asked me to podcast live from the expo hall, which was filled with most of the conference attendees. I'm releasing the series of interviews that are recorded while there, which were broadcast over the expo hall, and this is part 5 with another friend, excellent speaker, awesome person, and another previous interview from way back on episode 50. I'll add a link so you can find our previous episode as well. Melissa Sciorra is the Senior SEO Manager at SmarterTravel, a TripAdvisor company, and she was one of the panel moderators and speakers at 2019's Connect to Convert conference. And on this episode, we'll discuss lead gen through the lens of SEO, how to optimize your content with some best practice tips, finding Dory, optimizing for audio, title tags, ADA compliance, whether you can tear an ACL doing SEO, and a lot more. So let's tune in to a smarter traveling SEO expert with a worldly optimized shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Melissa, thank you for joining me again on A Shark's Perspective. I'm sure that after episode 50, it changed your life, but for the couple of people in the expo hall that don't know who you are and didn't check your session, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background career to date.
Hey there, so I work for SmarterTravel Media, which is a TripAdvisor affiliate. We own and operate a ton of different content websites ranging from Airfare Watchdog to JetSetter.com, SmarterTravel, basically any genre of travel audience you could think of, we cater to. And essentially we try to drive traffic back to TripAdvisor. And I do want to point out that after episode 50, I did sign a lot of autographs.
Did you? I've signed none after 167 episodes. So
congrats on that.
Thank you. So I met you last year here at Connect to Convert. It's one of the powerful things about being able to network with people here. I mean, obviously we see this in the expo halls and people outside networking and having meetings, but you were my favorite speaker, unless another friend comes up later and they ask me the same question.
Just
but
keep telling me that.
One of my favorite speakers, I'll put it that way, last year, and had a chance to connect with you afterwards. Mm-hmm. Why do you find that it's important for someone like you who's got an SEO focus in particular? And I know most of this because we've had this conversation before, but why do you think it's so important for you to be here to speak about what you're doing as it applies to lead generation? Because that's really the core focus of this, but where do you fit into that puzzle?
Yeah, so I mean, marketing is driving traffic and driving leads and driving revenue. And I believe that SEO should be agnostic across the entire marketing funnel, and a lot of the times SEO is very siloed. I find that a lot of business owners get really scared when they start talking about SEO and finding someone to do their SEO because it's scary to a lot of people. But the reason why I love coming to these conferences...
It's another acronym, nobody knows what it means.
Yeah, search engine optimization.
Yeah, have you optimized your SEO?
Yeah, do you show up in Google? Do you show up in Bing? So I love coming to these conferences and speaking plain English and helping business owners understand it doesn't have to be scary. It's basically doing what you're already doing with a little twist, just to make sure that Google and Bing and Yahoo will like what you're doing as well as your audience.
Well, I was, and I mentioned this on the message, but I was obviously ecstatic to see that you were here again speaking. Up until I saw where we were speaking. Two of my favorite people here were speaking at the same time I was speaking yesterday. But talk a little bit about what your session covered and what knowledge you were able to drop, if you will, at your session yesterday.
Yeah, so I moderated and joined a panel of SEOs, and we named it the SEO Tell-All, where we sort of came together and thought, okay, what would be very valuable for the audience, whether they were in SEO on a day-to-day or just sort of gripping the surface of it. So we talked a little bit about all the changes that happen in Google on a daily basis, and is SEO actually synonymous with Google? A lot of the times when SEOs talk, they really only talk about that one search engine, but people don't realize that there's 60, 70, 80 different search engines out there. Other
So you're
things.
saying that Bing matters a little bit.
No, but there are other search engines that maybe do better things. So DuckDuckGo is an emerging search engine, gained a ton of market share over the past year, and they're all about privacy. And there's ecosia.com, where every time you search, they actually plant a tree. So it's more about like understanding, like, yes, Google does make all the rules, but maybe we can sort of shift the focus on other search engines.
So you've been with SmarterTravels for a little over a year. You work with several different brands that you help manage. Especially from an SEO standpoint, what kind of challenges do you run into managing 6 different brands? Because each one of those has its own unique SEO things that you have to do, and then there's still some alignment, if you will, to stay core to the TripAdvisor family, if you will.
So working on 6 brands at once is very agency-like, and that's the background that I came from. So it's not necessarily overwhelming, and we do find that a lot of overlapping topics can be geared towards different audiences on each different website. So if we're going to be writing about compression socks, for example, and like, are compression socks good for your flight, or the types of compression socks that you can use, we can leverage our keyword and topical research across all of our brands, and the editorial team members can then, write that story in their own unique voice and their own unique brand. So one thing that's really valuable is I have a team of 30 plus editors that take my research and understand how I do my research, and they can sort of run with it and do their own research on top of it. I also have one new team member who I work with. She was on the email acquisition team, and she's sort of sharing her time, so I've been instilling my knowledge on her. So she can definitely help with a lot of topical research. But yeah, I find that teaching people to help me rather than just relying on myself to do all the research is where I find the most bang for my buck.
Your focus on SEO has been close to a decade?
I started by accident around 2011. Yeah.
Okay. So in 2011 to now, what kind of shifts have you seen in SEO in particular? And I say that because I have one of the least optimized sites of all time.
That makes me sad.
It does. Me too as well. And I hate it. But I'll admit it. I'll admit I have a problem. But do you find that in your own job role, especially working now for a brand, that it becomes more or less about title tags, for example, versus how you deliver content? I mean, what's sort of the changes that you've seen evolve?
That's a really great
question. 10 years ago, it was all title tag conversation for me.
Oh, yeah. So I still think that the baselines of search engine optimization are still in play. So we want to make sure that we have some sort of keyword in our title tag closer to the beginning, certain character lengths, like 50 to 60 characters. But a lot of SEO today is about the user and what the user is going to click on. So I try to instill in my editorial team, because these are the people who are essentially coming up with those title tags, header tags, alt text. Like, we have to be writing for the user. So if we're updating a story this month, So
you don't want your team to drop in that keyword 50 times and stuff it inside of a doc anymore.
No. When I first came into SEO,
very 2011.
I feel like that was even 2006. Before I came into SEO, keyword stuffing was all the rage, right? And then we understand that Google got smarter, the algorithms got smarter, they got much less time in between algorithms, and I've been practicing SEO, in a time where the algorithm updates 200 times a day, and Google no longer announces these updates. So I'm all for just like analyzing the real live search engine results, seeing what's working, going in private browsing mode, and doing a lot of tests and seeing what sticks. I talked about in my session yesterday how I ran a test to try to implement average read time of our articles within the meta description to see if that would help increase click-through rate, because sites like Medium and Facebook are saying, okay, this article is 6 minutes to read, this article is 5 minutes to read. So I was like, all right, cool. Maybe this will help in the search engine results. It didn't do anything. And that could be because Google chose not to show it, or it could be because it didn't matter to people. And it's all about continuously testing and seeing what works and seeing what sticks and looking at the data and making assumptions based on the data.
So with your team, what's the biggest challenge whether it's internally or with any other agencies that you work with, what is your biggest SEO challenge to educate these folks? I mean, I think having somebody that's done SEO as an agency, then going to an internal brand, it obviously gives you a distinct knowledge advantage for the most part, because although you can teach yourself SEO, a lot of people haven't really taught themselves the mechanics of it. They get the gist understanding, and that can also be a little bit dangerous. But
I do agree with that. It can be dangerous.
Yeah,
They take everything with a grain of salt,
exactly.
too. So it's like, if I say, the title tag has to be between 50 and 60 characters, and theirs is over 70, they'll kind of freak out a little bit. And I was like, no, it's okay. Like, it's not the end of the world. Google's not going to penalize you. Like, it's all testing. Like, Google has never come out and said 50 to 60 characters in order to rank. It's all assumptions.
Or they think they heard Neil Patel say it once, and then they just
they
set
read
forever.
it in an article from 2008.
Yeah, it was in Ad Age or SEO magazine.
Yeah.
So what is your biggest challenge then to help educate that internal or external third-party force in SEO?
My biggest challenge right now, I think, is just the amount of editors that I work with and all the questions that are coming through on a day-to-day. We use Slack for our internal communication, and I come back from a meeting and I'll have 50 Slack messages from 50 different editorial members that are all different, and they're all so simple questions, but to have to keep repeating myself over and over and over, it becomes really, really time intensive. I've combated that with creating an internal wiki document that houses a lot of Q&As so that if these questions do come up, they can quickly find their answer. But the thing with SEO is that it changes every day. Google just announced their September 2019 broad core algorithm update, and we only, can speculate what's going to happen with that. But the moment my editors see like a shift in impressions or a shift in clicks, it's, let's drop everything and figure this out. And it's really difficult to make assumptions based on a day or two of data because the SERPs are always shaken up.
As an SEO practitioner, not including what you have to educate your own internal team, what's your best resource of knowledge and learning as well? I mean, to stay on top of it, to keep on top of your game, where do you go to learn?
Yeah, so I've been...
Other than listening to a Shark's Perspective podcast.
Shark's Perspective podcast is my go-to.
Let me give you $1 real quick. So.
When I'm waiting for my next episode to come out, I have an entirely curated Twitter feed that I've been working on since I got into the SEO space in 2011. So anytime Search Engine Journal, Search Engine Land, Ahrefs comes out with these lists of top SEO influencers, I immediately follow them and get curated news in my Twitter feed on a daily basis. So anytime I'm commuting or waiting in the doctor's office or waiting for my next meeting, I can quickly scroll through and get an understanding of like, oh, okay, Google just announced this algorithm update, or oh, okay, John Mueller from Google just announced that, JavaScript rendering and dynamic rendering is the best option. And small little bits of information like that I can recall if something comes up, and then I'm able to do further research on it.
So how are you starting to look at, you personally, I'm not necessarily looking for the company directive from SmarterTravel in TripAdvisor, but how are you starting to look at audio and voice SEO?
Yeah, so voice SEO has been a thing for, I'd say, like 4 or 5 years now, and especially with assistive devices like Alexa and Siri, this is something that I've been optimizing towards for a really long time, both when I was in the agency space and with SmarterTravel. And the way that we find we can...
But why is that? I mean, five years ago, audio wasn't as huge as it is now.
Yeah, but it was definitely an emerging trend that we saw.
It fits into that local optimization.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. It fits into micro moments. It fits into the informational queries. If someone is asking Google or asking Siri a specific question, we want to try to cater our content to answer that question. And there's certain things that you could do within the formatting that really helps those answers show up in Google answer boxes or being read aloud by the assistive devices.
What advice would you give most brands and marketers today then in regards to how to start tackling voice?
I'd say
from an SEO perspective.
From an SEO standpoint, it's important to really do in-depth topical research. So if you're about to write an article or a blog post about a certain topic, research all of the questions that people are asking about that topic, and then try to go into all of the answers within that content. Google definitely prefers that longer tail, more comprehensive content versus just individual blog posts that answer each individual question. So try to make like a really, really awesome roundup for your topic, and in the beginning include some sort of table of contents that a user can like click to at any certain point in your article. It could help decrease bounce rate, it could help increase dwell time, create a video about it, create an infographic about it, use that multimedia in different areas like Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest. Like we see a ton of traffic coming back from Pinterest, so it's definitely underutilized.
Absolutely. The pins live forever.
Oh yeah.
I'm a big fan of Pinterest from an optimization search engine standpoint.
Yeah, Pinterest SEO is really fun.
I don't search for anything on there, but it is fantastic for brands.
People also don't understand that social media networking sites are also search engines.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, it's
Question then from an SEO perspective: how do you structure that answer to a narrower question? You don't necessarily know what they're going to. Amazon's not ready. Alexa's not ready to answer a long tail question because those questions and answers aren't built out yet, right?
Yeah.
So when you look at it from travel perspective, is it simply, find me best trips to the Bahamas or something like that? What are some initial guidelines people need to start thinking about? We use sort of that as an example.
I think it's all about where the searcher is in their research phase.
Yeah.
So if they already know they're going to Bahamas, then you can cater your questions and answers towards the Bahamas and specific areas in the Bahamas. But a lot of the times you have to sort of broaden your topics, and they might not even know where they want to go yet. So maybe you do a roundup of the best beaches in the world or the best places to visit in October or something to inspire them. And then once you hook them within the content itself, you can then internally link to other articles. So if they're reading about the best beaches to visit in the world and the picture of Bermuda really catches their eye, hyperlink to 4 other articles about Bermuda that they can continue on their journey so that they don't leave your site, Google Bermuda again, then maybe you don't have them anymore.
Have you optimized best places to go shark diving?
So one of our editors on the SmarterTravel team, SmarterTravel.com.
There's a small population of people like me that go to that.
She went diving with the sharks, and she has amazing photos. She shared them on our Instagram.
Did it 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine. I think that would scare me.
Yeah, it was the first thing I spoke at a conference, and the first thing I Googled not was the hotel. It's like best places to dive in that area. So. How much, if you think of it from just an optimization standpoint, again, this is the bright, shiny object of what everybody's talking about, but if you thought of that sort of search optimization as 100% of your time, of that 100%, how much of it are you day-to-day as an aggregate spending on voice search? Is it even 5% of your conversation, or is it a lot more?
It's a lot more. It's integrated into our entire strategy.
And are you starting to see those uses spike that much more heavily with the different devices?
So we don't have any analytics in Google Search Console on voice search yet. It's the tough part. We can only assume. There are opinions of SEO experts that if you're in the answer box, then that is what the Alexas and Siris read. But again, there's no data to prove it. What I can see is that all of our top queries for a lot of our brands are longer than 5 words. They're long tail queries, they're conversational based questions, and Google is trying to answer those questions by providing the best results. So the best way we can do that is by helping Google.
Well, you're going to start optimizing. I don't know if you heard in the news, but Alexa's hired Samuel L. Jackson. They're going to use that as, he's going to give some tailored responses back to certain questions.
Alexa.
So if you can talk about travel and curse in the process, there's probably a good chance Samuel will read back the answer. From a user experience standpoint, are you starting to focus more of your SEO efforts on that? And the reason I bring this up, and I was just talking about this a little bit earlier, is that and I've done SEO. I've been lazy for some time now on my own site, but I talked about this on a podcast I did just recently with somebody who was a Golden Buzzer winner on America's Got Talent, who's a personal friend of mine. Her video's been seen over 500 million times.
Wow.
Simon Cowell gave her the Golden Buzzer, and part of the reason why her story was kind of Susan Boyle-ish, if you will. Pretty girl, sings fantastically well. What's also remarkable about her, other than being just a great human, is that she's deaf. Mm-hmm. That was what drew such initially huge attention, is what she could do being deaf and still being able to sing. But I talked about this on my takeaways that I do at the end of every show, including yours and other ones I did with her. But if I asked most people today about SEO, 99% of the experts would talk about, well, you've got to transcribe your podcast because it helps Google find it. But what I also thought about in great detail, because she's personally a friend and it reminded me, is that you've got to also focus on the user experience of that content and how people like that can actually access the content.
Oh, yeah.
And that is not enough people, because 99% of the SEO experts would never think about the user.
Yeah.
So how do you sort of even take that story, but how do you sort of apply that in your day-to-day life with content that you're helping optimize?
Yeah, so
because we often forget there's a user that's actually reading it.
Oh, absolutely. So a few years ago, the American Disabilities Act came out with a new legislature that basically ensured all websites became ADA compliant, which meant that your colors had to invert a certain way.
Exactly.
Your website had to be accessible through a keyboard, like buttons needed to be named. And a lot of the times people don't understand that the reason why we're optimizing alt text or alternative text behind images is so that those screen readers can read the image to the person who has the disability.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about a girl that's deaf. That's like 10 million people in the country that can't hear well.
Oh, yeah.
But the deaf people, the blind people, there's such a huge amount of people in the country who can't consume text the same way.
Yep, everyone is traveling, and we definitely have to be sure to answer those questions for everyone. Our websites are ADA compliant, and for all of our YouTube videos, we do transcribe those so that the e-readers can read what's happening. And then just in terms of how your website's created, like if you have a click here button, just be specific with where they're clicking to. And for alternative text, it used to be an area that SEOs used to spam and throw keywords in there. But what I've actually learned is that we want to make it more clear for the user with a disability, like exactly what is in the image. And fun fact, you should put a period at the end of your alt text so that the screen reader that's reading it will stop and pause before moving on to the rest of the content. And I thought that was like a fun little tidbit of information.
That's great. And I think I brought up yesterday in my speech, but just literally with captions on images, just adding that. You sometimes think of it from an SEO tactic, but people actually read them much more than they do a lot of the content.
Yeah.
So it's really important.
People love to scroll.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they're not reading your 2,000 word, blog like they used to.
That's an interesting point too. Like if you have a 2,000 word block paragraph.
Yeah. What are they going to read? They're going to read the small little block underneath your picture.
Or break it up using those subheadings, and then it'll be valuable for SEO too.
So. You may remember this, so I'm going to ask you again. Oh, no, you didn't do this back in episode 50.
50.
I think I started this a little bit later. So you're on you know me. What is your favorite kind of shark and why?
Oh,
Taylor needs to know.
I recently learned about the whale shark. Have you ever Googled a photo of a whale shark?
Yeah.
Oh my God, their mouths are massive.
Largest fish in the ocean.
But they're friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's my answer.
They eat a lot of
whale
krill
shark.
and things like that. So a friendly shark
I would go swimming
so a
with
girl
a whale
living
shark.
near the near the bay up here is more, once not great whites, they want the friendly shark. So
yes, please.
You're more Finding Dory than Jaws.
Yeah.
I gotcha. All right, so we're going to ask these again. I've been asking these similar questions.
Okay.
So are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
For sure.
Number 1, Batman or Iron Man?
I think you did ask me these.
Well, they were different then.
Yeah, okay. Batman or Iron Man? Iron Man, because I don't like Batman's voice.
Depends which version.
All of them.
Will Arnett in Lego Batman is amazing.
I'm just thinking of the one that
Yeah,
talks like
exactly. Christian Bale kind of went weird with it.
Yeah.
Number 2, the Chart House, where I ate last
Okay.
night, which is amazing. Second oldest building in Boston. I learned,
So beautiful.
was left after the Tea Party and everything. Or Legal Seafood.
Oh, the Chart House.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking about eating illegal seafood tonight. I'm not certain
No,
now.
I can give you another option.
Okay, well after this we'll talk. Number 3, content marketing or lead generation.
Well, I'd have to say content marketing since you could use it for lead generation.
That's a good answer.
Curveball.
Number 4, a conference in Vegas or a conference in Boston.
Conference in Boston because I don't like cigarette smoke.
Good point. Good point. Yeah. That's a really good answer. All right, number 5, and the most important question of your best day is biscuits or cornbread.
Okay, I think I'm still going with cornbread.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I don't get enough of it. I don't get enough of biscuits either.
No, you go to Cracker Barrel where you don't have to choose.
Yeah,
So they have those even here.
that's what I need to do.
All right, where do people find out about you, follow you on your exclusive Twitter feed?
So they can follow me on Twitter at Mel_Arowix. It's my last name backwards, which is a little confusing. And it's the same on Instagram, and you can follow my adventures across the world.
Next time I see you, I want to see without a knee brace.
I hope so. Yeah, my surgery was pretty rough a few weeks ago.
You didn't tear your ACL doing SEO, did you?
Unfortunately, no. That would
Okay.
have been a much better story.
That would you can optimize a knee. So,
Yeah.
Melissa, again, thank you for being with us here at Connect to Convert on a Shark's Perspective.
I appreciate it, Shark. Thank you again for having me.
You bet. So there was my conversation with Melissa Sciorra, the Senior SEO Manager at SmarterTravel, a TripAdvisor company, and she was one of the panel moderators and speakers at 2019's Connect to Convert conference. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from a conversation with her. First, with SEO, I say test and optimize, test and optimize, test and optimize. There are so many SEO changes every day, and SEO is one of those things that we do with best practices, and then Google changes its algorithms and again and again and again. But as she so aptly pointed out, Google makes all the rules, but don't forget all the other search engines that you should also be considering when optimizing. Second, several years ago when I was building websites, everyone's focus was on title tags and keyword stuffing, and thank goodness that shifted. As she said, a lot of SEO today is about the user and what the user is going to click on. Amen. That focus should be on the user. It's good to think that as Google got smarter with its tactics, it's helped smart marketers like Melissa stay with that focus. Third, from a voice SEO perspective with audio, research the questions and then try to go into the content with those answers. When thinking of those questions, think about where the searcher is in that phase of their question. It's obviously not an exact science, but you can look at the data to predict many of those questions. And I'm really interested in how bounce rates will change over time with how well SEO is optimized. And finally, with voice, there are so many large companies' websites that are not ADA compliant. I bring up the reference of a personal friend who is deaf, but make sure to answer questions for everyone. There's a significant part of the population who doesn't consume text the same way you often do. And ADA compliance has been out there for years, but still there's so many large company sites that are not ADA compliant. It's not just important for business, it's the right thing to do. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you for the privilege of your time. So let's optimize and then connect to convert on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.